All right, Facebook is up and running. Thank you very much for your patience. We begin tonight talking about dessert wine. My name is Ian Blackburn. I am a sommelier and experienced industry veteran. I've been in the wine world for coming up on 30 years now. I can't believe it. I want to thank you guys for joining us for dessert wine. I will say that the state of the dessert wine industry is just remaining in a difficult place, as dessert wines used to be the most important wines made, period. They ruled the wine universe. And what we see in history when we read about the fine wines of the world, we were probably reading about delicious, semi-sweet wines because everything was naturally fermented back in the day. And that natural fermentation depended on the strength of the yeast, and they had no comprehension for fermentation science. And back in the 1940s, even the dessert wines of Germany were as expensive and as important and as in demand as the great wines such as Chateau Margaux and other collectible wines. So the dessert wine industry is really taking a hit as people left. I think there was a psychological change where everything that has sweetness must be bad, or, oh, I shouldn't be drinking this because I taste sweetness. And I've seen this almost physical response to dessert wines in some customers where they are so opposed to drinking it, maybe because they believe that they're putting something in their body that's going to hurt them calorically or something like that. There is a psychological thing happening with dessert wine that I need to kind of understand, because I want to help make dessert wines important again. I love these wines. Quite honestly, when I taste these wines, I just don't know how people can't find uh, the the greatest pleasure in wine drinking these wines. These are the pleasure. This is the pleasure center right here. So I'm a little passionate about it. I'm a little crazy about it, but I think you'll agree with me that the wines that we're going to taste tonight are worth the calories, worth the pain. This is what God gave us as for our existence here on Earth. This is one of the most naturally occurring, most beautiful things that we can make. And with that, let's begin. Let's delve into our dessert wine program. We're going to cover a lot of ground. There's a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to taste. Is it five? Five dessert wines. I gave you nice sized portions. Those of you that are just watching, we use the little 2-ounce jars, and usually it's half a jar for dessert wine because we're typically pouring out of half bottles with dessert wines. And we base the price of our Zooms by adding up all of the bottles of the wines and cutting it down into how many jars we can make. But these pours are just a little bit bigger because this program is just a little bit smaller. So everybody's kind of drinking other people's wine tonight. We wish you were here. We do. We truly do. But since you're not, we'll drink your wine for you. And let's get started with wine number one. I have some therapeutic gloves on today. I had a little hand work done. I was in a pretty bad car accident back in December, and continuing to see some PT people. I was holding on the steering wheel when I got slammed from a car behind me, and my thumbs are just screwed up. It's really sucks. My left thumb, I can barely even open anything. I think it's PT, Lisa. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not occupational. I think that's what that means, right? Don't pretend to know. Let's go. Let's taste some dessert wines, and we're going to cover a range from late harvest to botrytis to fortified. And I really enjoy talking about these categorically, but we also love pouring extremely good examples. And so we're going to start off with the leading example of Tokai, Royal Tokai. This is Hungary's finest wine export. Just historically, this was like one of Napoleon's favorite wines in the world. The king of wines, the wine of kings. It's got all kinds of nicknames and historical references. Uh, Post World War II, things fell into pretty bad place. I'm not sure of exactly when communism took over Hungary, the exact year. Maybe if you're a history fan on this Zoom, you can tell me. But by the late 1970s, early 1980s, the communism disappeared, return to a capitalistic market. And what they did under communism is they kind of turned their wine product, their wine culture into like making one wine that wasn't very good. And it really just kind of broke the historical notion of what the good wines were. And so some very smart businessmen came in and knew where those great vineyards were located and started acquiring them and amassed a great holding, a great set of holdings of great vineyards. And that's Royal Tokai. There's some really impressive people that were doing this together. It was during the 1980s. They invested a good sum of money at that time into what is potentially the most important wine of Hungary, Royal Tokai Wine Company. Now, there are other great Tokais, and I carry a number of them on the website. They can vary in price. What I will give a nice big pat on the back to the Royal Tokai Company is that they know that they need people to hear about these wines. They need fans, and they keep this wine priced smartly. The other people that are in this category that are making very good Tokai are in it for acclaim, for mystique, for prestige, and the pricing kind of represents that when I taste them. So I really think Royal Tokai knows who they are and why they're important, and they're probably able to do this because they got in so early and they were able to buy so many great assets at probably discounted prices that their cost of production is got to be fractional compared to these other folks as well. So just appreciate that when we talk about the Royal Tokai 5 Puttonyos Aszú. So this is the wine, Puttonyos meaning buckets, buckets of paste. They take the ferment grape, which makes, by the way, a very compelling dry white wine, which we also sell. We sell two extremes on that version too. We have a very affordable one from Royal Tokai Company, and we have one that presses up against the top white Burgundies, about $120 a bottle for a dry Hungarian Tokai that is magical and beloved and highly scoring and etc. But it's not going to be anytime soon that the world starts drinking dry Tokai in large quantity. It is these wines that set the stage, that built the reputation of this area. The wine is again made from ferment. They make it in one of the most unique ways. It is made by them going through the vineyards and picking the crop of ferment. They pull off the berries that have become botricized. Basically, on a bunch of grapes, they'll have some beautiful green ferment grapes to make white wine from, and then they'll have a few berries here and there that look like raisins, probably have a little botrytis, which is the noble rot. And they'll pull those berries off one at a time and put them in a basket. Then they'll take those berries that have this rot on them and they'll crush them into a paste. And then they'll take buckets of the paste and add that number of buckets to 1 barrel of the dry white wine. So this is 5 buckets of paste to last year's dry white wine. So when you talk about 2017, that's the year of the harvest of the white. And then they add the next year's paste to this white wine. And that's how they do this. It's a very unique process. There's no additional fermentation. There's no additional sweetness needed. There are different levels of Aszú. They can have 3 buckets, 4 buckets, 5 buckets, 6 buckets, and then they make a wine from pure paste. It's called essentia, and the essence of Aszú. And just like anything, I think there's like a range that I find where the pleasure's delicious, delicious, delicious. That all of a sudden became too sweet. And I've always felt like Aszú was too sweet. Now, at some point in my life, I'm going to go to Hungary and I'm going to taste some. I'm going to find some Aszú and I'm going to be like, oh, that one works for me. But they're not commercially being brought in. And if you find an Aszú, they're typically very expensive. And I don't think they get better. I think this is right where it needs to be. 5 Puttonyos. This is the best seller. This is what you're gonna, if you go to the French Laundry, they're gonna probably have this wine, because it's a fighter. And this is a wine that people taste, and that so many people have never tried this wine. So many people, and it's so good with dessert. It's so food friendly, and you could really have this with so many different things. Now, I was talking earlier about the Royal Tokai Wine Company, and here's a nice slide to give us a little bit of background. The names that I was talking about, one of the names is Hugh Johnson, and he is a very famous wine writer from England. And he was very highly thought of for a very long time, and was kind of the spearhead of purchasing and revitalizing this magical place. There's some great videos which I can't play because we don't have rights to play them during our program. But if you Google Hugh Johnson talking about Royal Tokai Wine Company, you'll see the man himself with this absolutely deliciously noble accent. I mean, like it's spooned right out of the royal family to talk about wine. And he's such a character. And when people say wine's kind of snooty, it's probably because they watched a Hugh Johnson video. The guy is just dripping with nobility, and yeah, that can come off a little snooty, I think. This is a look at one of the great growth vineyards, Meshes Mali. And like I said, they were first. They went in and they're like, those were the great vineyards. Let's buy them all. And they almost did. They almost got them all. So Royal Tokai Wine Company gets pat on the back and a little bit of like, you guys really were aggressive. They bought a lot of the great material. So they have amazing assets to work with. Now, there was another grape, Harv's Elu. Harv's of Elu is the other grape that's also involved here, and that makes the Aszú. I'm trying to figure out the percentage here. Why does it say 35%? Because that's not right. It's got to be 75 or 70% ferment and 30% Harv's Elu. But I'm gonna figure out why that slide is so off. and I'll look at my wine slide that we own from our own website to do that in just a moment. But intense nose with lots of fruitiness and spice, great structure and vibrant freshness with flavors of white peach, ripe plums. I think of all stone fruit. I mean, come on, if you're not talking about apricots in the first second that you start describing this wine, you're missing the very key, like ding, ding, ding. Those are apricots. Like, I think Hugh Johnson says luscious apricots. And that's exactly what I think you get here. Yeah, see right down here, 65 ferment and 30% Aszú, Arvzalou. That's still not 100%. I don't know what the hell's going on with these percentages. When you describe a wine and you want to really get specific about percentage, you better equal 100%, for God's sake. Here's the room, the caves that these literally are dug out underneath the vineyards. These are the ancient caves. So some of these go back hundreds of years, and they have a personality that really instills itself on the wines as well. The air smells different. The place, the barrel itself sitting there in this special rock underneath the soil, and it's very humid in there as well. So it allows for a very slow evaporation, and also keep it so cool that it resists spoilage, which a lot of sweet wines can suffer from, because it's just sitting there like sweetness sitting there that can be corrupted by bacteria. So another great look at the vineyard and the material that we're working with, and just vast flat valleys, slow rolling hills, kind of optimal, like very similar to what you would see in the great wine regions of Bordeaux and Burgundy, kind of look like this. But you can also see some, more modern vineyard management as they are trellising these vineyards. I don't see any drip irrigation. I know that they're probably not doing that. They don't need to. Plenty of water and plenty of moisture. And that's how you get botrytis in the first place. You're hanging your fruit out there, it's getting ripe, a little bit of rain, a little bit of cold air, bam, here comes the mildew or the molds. And some of them are very good. The noble rot has a very interesting effect on the berry. It shrivels up, lives on the moisture, but retains the sweetness and elevates the sugar levels. It's really a magical experience. So here's our wine. Let's see if my percentages do that on my website. Sometimes I do. Look at that. Terrible. So I will get that fixed. We'll find out the correct answer, but I'm pretty damn sure that's 1,000% wrong. And this wine has been on my website since day one, and I remember that girl that worked for me back then. So I need to continue to find these things that are completely wrong. Completely wrong. There we go. It'll be fixed tomorrow.
So I wrote this, but what's the ideal temperature of serving, and how long can you age this for?
Great. First, the serving question. You wouldn't be wrong to serve this pretty damn cool, but I think it's almost just as pleasurable, close to room temperature. You're gonna really pick up on the aromatics. When it's really cool, the acidity is a little bit more tight and refreshing. And when it warms up and softens up, that acidity kind of plays the game of temperature and relaxes a little bit, and the sweetness kind of takes over. So you can kind of dial it into your preference. I like to for this program, I like to take my dessert wines, put them in the refrigerator, and then pull them out at least about a half hour before the program, let them kind of come closer to the room temperature, but still be very, very cool. I'm gonna taste this with you guys now too. I'm excited to do that. I've been waiting. What do you guys smell and taste? Can you get that dried, that almost like a can of apricots, canned apricots with the sweet juices. Um, you can really smell that.
Very vanilla. Are these Hungarian barrels, Hungarian wood?
Oh, of course. Yeah, you're gonna mostly have Hungarians using Hungarian stuff, all from just from a cost standpoint. That's kind of their deal, but they may use a broader selection of different wood. Um, but sure, certainly Hungarian wood would be optimal for this cause. And they're probably using very old barrels. Not, but I do agree with you. There's a plentiful amount of that vanilla from that, almost like you can almost smell the char vanilla from the inside of the barrel. But if you kind of close your eyes and can smell that fresh apricot, but then start to imagine things behind it, like tangerine and orange peel. One of the great, I love to eat, and I love to go through. You know, sometimes I leave, and I've had the great pleasure of eating at French Laundry a couple times, and I worked for Chef Keller when he was here in LA, and you sit there long enough and you leave French Laundry and you're going to a drive-in because you're hungry. You just sat through a 4-hour meal, 17 courses, and you're starving at that point. Those last couple of courses just kind of lift you up and get your body, heart beating really hard, all the sugars and stuff and the acidity. And they put down those little jellies with the little orange peel stuff. And that is what this wine shines with, are all those little desserty, condimenty type of confectionaries that you finish the meal with. And you want to sit around and have a great conversation with people, an amazing meal. This is the wine to extend that conversation. Now, this does have a vintage on it. It is 17. I buy this regularly. Um, I'm pretty sure 17, maybe 18 is the current vintage now. Um, and with the way things have been going in the world, I'm sure the 18 has come in and now will make me go over $70 a bottle, because every time you buy an imported product, they've been ingesting these costs as well, and they've all been shooting up at a pretty severe rate. But around $70 a bottle, you could buy these wines and sit on them for a long time. Um, the I do believe that they are ready to drink when you buy them. I think you're safe to age these longer, and you will see them advance, and they'll add some weight and some richness. They'll get a little darker. That's the weird thing about white wines. They go darker and red wines get lighter as they age. But this one would get, more of an amber brownish, and you might start picking up, a little bit more honey, a little bit more of that drier fruit aroma over time. I like them like right here, right now. I just think that for Royal Tokai, if I were gonna lay some down, I might buy one of those more fancy ones that is a little bit more expensive and maybe needs some age. Royal Tokai does such a good job of making this wine drinkable now. And just the fact that we're able to buy the 17 and it's current, it's 6 years, it's 5, 6 years. So this wine's they kind of do the work for us, aging it, because they know that I'm not kidding when I say these numbers. 80% of this wine is being poured by restaurants, top restaurants in America, by the glass. That's where this wine's going. It's not a big wine. I mean, they own great vineyards, and they make a good amount of this wine. But when you talk about worldwide, this is the ambassador for the category, and all the great Michelin star restaurants that there are out there, probably, I bet it's safe to say half of them are pouring this wine by the glass at dessert. That's how important this wine is. My first wine tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the Tokai 5 Puttonyos. They call it red label, just to keep it real easy to remember. And isn't this wine delicious? Come on. Yeah, I know people that don't like this wine. I'd like to know so many people. I didn't need the people that don't like this wine in my life. That's where I'm going to put it. Mm. Just makes I put it in my mouth and I taste the sweetness, but here comes that roaring acidity that has now cleansed it from my palate. I'm good to go. Dessert wine should not tire you out. It should actually revive you. And that's where I'm at. I feel even better. This should be what everybody does after a hard day's work.
What was the alcohol on that?
Oh, that's a great question. That's 11%. And that's kind of where it gets to, because they pick that dry, those berries for the ferment, and they're picking that pretty early. And then they will leave some on the vine to make sure they get enough botrytis out there. And so they'll have this early picking of the ferment for the dry white, and then the late picking of the ferment for the berries. But they'll also go through and pick out those singular berries early on. So 11% alcohol, but obviously the use of the paste is to elevate the sweetness, not the alcohol. Let's go into wine number 2. Don't want to rush. I haven't finished. See, that was a big pour, right? That was a lot of Tokai. So what you could do, if you like me, I'm gonna pour it back in my little jar and have a little after party. Once you open that bottle, it's good for about 10 days. It's better the first 5, but it'll be passable for the next 5 after that. Dessert wine, mature, if you're keeping it in your refrigerator, it'll last a lot longer than a normal bottle of wine. Another selling point for dessert wine, we need more fans, people. We need more fans. Let's go to wine number 2, Sauternes. Got to have a Sauternes in a discussion of great dessert wines of the world. This is absolutely essential and also classic, where we need to teach people about Hungarian Tokai because they either don't care or haven't experienced it before. Sauternes is like, okay, so when you think dessert wine, this might be the first one you think about. This is how important Sauternes is to dessert wine. There are some major brands in the Sauternes world. We're tasting one of them. Suduiraut is the brand here. Oh, but we're tasting their second wine called Lions of Suduiraut. So the Château Suduiraut will make, which is owned by Mouton Rothschild, by the way. They will make their top wine, and they'll sell that for a bunch of money. This one performs really well and is quite affordable. Yeah, so Suduiraut goes back to the 1600s, like many of the best. When you've got a great reputation in Bordeaux, it's coming from the history standpoint because you owned this incredible piece of land. You can't make wines like this if you don't own the right spot. I mean, you need the right climatic situation, you need the right soil, the right exposition, all that stuff. And this checks all those boxes. It's really an important vineyard. And um, I put this up there as one of the better Sauternes. And I'm talking about the second wine. The first wine from Suduiraut is one of, like, you got Ikem way up here, at $400 plus a bottle, and then Suduiraut in the high 150 to 250 range. And then you got this one that sells for less than 40, kind of bringing up, the bottom of part of the top 10. So really, a nice wine for the money. Oh, look at that. That equals 100%. 92% Semillon, 8% Sauvignon Blanc. This is how they do it. The fruit's growing in lower Bordeaux. It's August. It's hot. And all of a sudden, this tropical storm comes in off the ocean and dumps. And then it's cool for a couple of days. And you got all that sugar on the fruit, in the fruit. You've got all this water and you've got all this moisture, and things are alive, and botrytis kicks in. And it happens without any real magic or hocus pocus in Sauternes. That's what it looks like. It's kind of flat and it's kind of cloudy and it's kind of moist, and the soils retain moisture and they leave lots of leaf on the vineyard. When you want to eliminate moisture in the vineyard, you de-leaf, you keep air moving through the vineyard, you probably get a little bit of land with a little bit of a tilt to it. You got those kind of things working. Not here. You want the moisture captured, you want that humidity, you want that lack of air blowing through the vineyard. You leave the heavy set of leaf on top, and you will basically guarantee that you're going to get botrytis. They use new wood in the production of these wines. They like flawlessness, they like freshness, they like cleanliness. They like you to smell the purity of the vintage. This is a 2015, by the way. Oh, that nose, and a little more restrained, I think, in the nose than the first wine, a little more aromatic. But this one's got such a finesse and purity and balance and restraint and gorgeous character. There's Suduiraut, 25.95. Then that's a half bottle now. So those prices I was talking about before are more on the 750 side. So this wine in the 750, somewhere between 40 and 50 bucks. You do pay a little bit more actually when they put it in a half bottle, because it's a lot of work to get it in there. But a half bottle helps you keep it pretty fresh and you turn through it. So I think half bottle is the way to go with dessert wine. Also, half bottle kind of gets ready to be drank a little faster. Did you know that your half bottles kind of age at an accelerated pace? So, having this wine, step on it a little bit is kind of nice. Um, so great producer, great brand, great price. 15 vintage. I'm sure that the current vintage is now 16 or 17. I remember when the importer offered me this 15, I tasted it, I loved it. Said, "Do you have any more 15?" He goes, "The last of the 15 is here. I've got about 5 cases." I took it all because the price point was solid. It was, we were still, I think, in the down market of the pandemic, and I knew the future wine prices were kind of screaming in. So this wine probably, out of half bottle, should be at that $40 mark as well by now, because the next time when I go to buy it, it might be 17 or 18, and it's going to be a lot more. The margins are pretty teeny in wine. And I typically price my wine based on, uh, if I can charge more and I can look good and justify the price, I love to find those opportunities to be able to make a little bit of money. But sometimes you look on Wine Searcher, and I encourage everybody to do that. Winesearcher.com, you put in the name of the wine and you see everybody's prices, and you can kind of see where the price, what do I need to be in the top 3 or 5 on almost every wine. That's how I kind of live. People can't walk into my store, so my prices are typically in the top 5 on Wine Searcher. I didn't check that out before I said all that, and I don't want to go to Wine Searcher and look, but I'm pretty sure that I've been there in the top 5 on the 15 vintage. Remember, what'd you think of that one, Tony? You got an opinion?
No, I love it. I always love this. Yeah, Centurion. Um, I'm one of the weirdos. I love dessert wine stuff, and usually
Fantastic.
I go out of the United States because I mean Washington's getting better, but I think they're they were too sweet for a long time and not very complex. So but this has always been a beautiful wine.
Gary, how about you? I can't hear you, buddy. I'm gonna ask you to unmute. And I see you talking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember spending about a week in that area just drinking all sorts of different types. So I liked it. Yeah.
Awesome.
I remember stealing into the Yaquin vineyard and picking some of the grapes off the vine too, just so I could say I'd done it.
Good for you. We'll move into our next wine on our program tonight, wine number 3 of 5. I did not share the screen. Let me do that. All right, so we went from Hungarian Tokaji to Sauternes from France. There are a lot of wines that I could consider, but you've got to think, maybe I should be pouring some German Riesling. So I looked around and I found something perfect. This is a really cool producer called Frey. This is Beerenauslese. So when they're picking the grapes in Germany, they're picking early for Trocken or cabinet level of sweetness. Very fresh, crispy, not very sweet wines. They're probably going to bottle those with 8 or 9% alcohol. And there's going to be a little bit of that residual sugar just to balance out all that minerality, that stoniness that I was talking about. But it's still pretty damn dry. Not trying to be dessert wine. This is what you would have as a refreshing, wine with your barbecue chicken pizza or something like that. The next time they pick, they'll go through the vineyard again and they'll pick with a higher sugar level, and they'll get juice with more must weight, more sugar, more, it's called uxla, the weight of the sugar. They'll do their computation and they'll call that Spätlese. Spätlese. And that has a little higher sweetness and a little riper character, but very clean, very fresh. Then they can go through and pick grapes at a slightly higher level of sweetness, and that'll be Auslese. And by the time you get to that Auslese character, there could be slight raisin type of fruit starting to appear. The next level of ripeness is Beerenauslese, and that's where we're at here. And this fruit is impacted by botrytis, heavily impacted by botrytis. And then there's Trocken Beerenauslese, which is basically pure botrytis. Now, there's another dessert wine that's strangely popular that people know the name, ice wine, but it's so rare from Germany that very few people have ever tried German ice wine. Now, Canada can make ice wine all day long, and they do it so well that it's completely devalued the why is German ice wine $200 for a thimble of ice wine? Well, that's because they're literally waiting until the grapes freeze in January, and they're working with frozen raisins. Can you imagine the yield? I mean, you have to wake up at 3 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning when it's frozen. You go out and pick raisins and turn them into wine. That is severe masochism, and the Germans do it, but they don't do it very much, and they don't even like to do it because it's like a second harvest. You just got through making wine, and then you got to go back out in the frozen to make this little bit of dessert wine that people are very reluctant to pay for because it's so expensive. And Canada, by the way, can sell it for a fraction of the price. So with all that, this is damn close. This is like, this is super good. Beerenauslese from Germany. Now, I'm saying all this, and this is so affordable because this is in the Rheinheisen, and gotta get the bottle out. It's a full 375 bottle, all limestone soils. So we're not talking about purple or pink or blue slate. We're talking about limestone. We're talking about flat lands, using a tractor and keeping things pretty cost affordable. They do also use horses, and they use, do a lot of handwork as well, but you can use a tractor out here. This producer has some nice ethos, does things in a really nice way. Let's see, what else do I want to say about this wine? There is some oak barrel aging here, because the sweetness, you need the oxygen, you need they do some of it in stainless steel, some in wood, and then they blend it together to create the right type of flavors here. Put this third, because this is on the sweeter scale. Aromatically the most sweet, almost candied like.
What do you smell on the nose? I can't place it. I know it, but I can't place it.
That to me is more pear, pineapple, maybe something like, have you ever had a grilled pineapple where they take a ripe pineapple and throw it on a barbecue and really candy that sugar? Mm. This is definitely got more sweeter flavor profile. The acidity here isn't quite as searing as in the Tokaji or as in the Bordeaux. So this sweetness really lingers, and it's still there, like, but it's not weighting me down so much because it's so bright. It's so fun, and that profile is just really, really fun. But that's definitely, that's sitting on the sweet button, not just touching it. That is like pressing that sweet button hard. Love to get your reactions on it. Here they are in the vineyards. Look at that fruit, just perfect conditions. 25 bucks. I honestly taste a lot of dessert wines, and this may be the first one I ever bought because it was such a good price. I liked it before I knew the price. I was waiting for a price that was way more expensive. I'm like, how much? And I jumped on some of this. Now, the importer is fairly new with this brand. I know he's probably working a little harder on this. But I think it's hard not to like this wine. This is the kind of wine. I have a young lady that works in my office. She's very young, old enough to drink, but very young, barely knows anything about wine. I love to find nice, smart young people that would like wine, but she doesn't know. She not only doesn't know much about it, she knew she liked some wines. When she said that, I said, "Are they sweet?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, I love the sweet wines." So when I had the vendor here from this winery and I tasted this, she was like 5 feet away from me. So I handed her the glass and she lit up like a light bulb when I gave her this wine. She was like, "Oh, this is the best wine I've ever had." And I knew I found something pretty good. But I think it's affordable luxury. It's something you could drink every day. You open a bottle like this, and 5, 6, 7, 10 days later, it's still great. Just take a little sip every day, make life good. I think that's a good way to go. Beerenauslese, Germany. Love that simple label too. Very noble, very cool. All right, so we're thinking about dessert wine. What else should we show in a night dedicated to great desserts? Okay, well, we've checked the box of the king of wines and the wine of kings, the dessert wine of Napoleon, Hungarian Tokaji. We checked the box of Bordeaux Sauternes. We've checked the box of German Riesling on the sweet side, Beerenauslese. And so coming down the list, what else is important? Well, how about maybe what should be more considered the number one most important wine, but we can't start with it because it needs to be tasted in the right order. Port wine from the Douro Valley, the very first delineated wine making zone in the world. Not the first place to make wine, but it's the first place where the king of Portugal said, if you're going to make port wine, it has to be made here. And he delineated or drew a circle around the area that could be considered port wine production area. And I had the great pleasure of taking a group to Oporto a couple of years ago. Lisa's here tonight. You were there, right, Lisa?
And I love port. Oh, I just opened it.
You were there, right? With me, Lisa? Weren't you there?
Where? Which?
Didn't you go to Portugal with me?
No, I didn't. Probably in your mind because I just
Man, I
love.
thought you were there. I'm sorry, Lisa.
I love port. I have been known to drink too much port.
Well, I maybe that's why I thought of you. But I know you've traveled with me to a couple of great places. So,
And soon again, it's going to come.
all right, I hope. Can't wait. That's what I love to do. We are tasting Kopke 2007. This is a single Colheita. Now, I was going to taste a 20 or a 30-year tawny port, and I want to explain the difference between that and what we're drinking tonight. I decided to pour this Colheita because, first of all, Colheita is my preference. When you talk about tawny ports, they are 10, 20, 30, 40, or now 50 years of age. And that means that they taste like they're 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50. They are actually blended wines from multiple ages that they have to be presented to the port council, and they have to approve whether it tastes like it's 20 or 30 years of age. Where a Colheita is from probably a single barrel of wine, like literally one barrel, they'll bottle it. And this is from a single vintage. They know exactly what this is, exactly where it's from. And there's something singular about them that's a little bit more focused, maybe not as sweet as a 20 or a 30, but a little more complexity because it's a more of a singular notion that I really think carries, and it's ironic because these wines are truly rare. And I do believe that the Portuguese like to make wines that they can make enough of to sell everybody in the world a bottle. That's why port wine blending and multiple vintages and all that stuff is there in the first place. So they don't have to, oh, you haven't tried the wine from this barrel? Let's taste this one. Oh, let's taste that one. Let's pick which barrel you like. That is agonizing, and that's not a good business model. So Colheita is not a great business model, but it's a better wine. And so the port industry likes to sell wines all over the world that they can, mass propagate. Love that. It's cool. But in my heart of hearts, I know this is a better wine. And these wines are, this wine, by the way, bottles right here. Conveniently stuck a sticker on it. So it says bottled in 2022. So this is a barrel from the 2007 vintage that was bottled in 22. So this is only 15 years old. That's why the color is still kind of red, because this wine started off as a red wine. And over time, it loses its color and gets a little less red, a little more tawnied, a little more thick. The evaporation in the barrel continues until it's bottled. When they bottle this down, you could age this 2007 in a closed bottle for a long time, maybe forever. I don't want to say that and be wrong, but it's longer than a lifetime, and you've got something really focused. And they didn't put this 2007 bottle aside or barrel aside because they had all these wines and didn't have anything to do with them. There was something about this 2007 barrel. They said, let's bottle that one. There's something definitive about it. So Kopke or Kopke, I think is actually how you're supposed to pronounce it. But we also, Anglicize it with an E. Kopke is how most people say it in America, but it's Kopke. And it's Colheita 2007. When you smell it, and if you've been, tasting the others, your sweetness knows you're seeing this is not as sweet as the prior wine, but this has 20% alcohol. This is made through fortification. The other wine that we had prior to this, the German Riesling, that was just naturally fermented, and there was no fortification. And that German Riesling, by the way, finished with an alcohol of This is the second time this has happened to me recently. These half bottles, when they bottled them, 8%, 8% alcohol. That's almost something you could drink at school when you were a kid. That's like a cough syrup, 8%. That's barely any alcohol. And this is 20%. This will put you to sleep. This will give you dreams. And that's, why a lot of people actually drink port wine in the world today now is this is a digestif. This will relax you. This will help with digestion. This will help your blood. This will help your liver function. Now, I'm saying that it will help because we drink a little bit, not a whole bottle of it. But this wine is literally like medicine to the elderly. And in the 1600s, this was the most important wine in the world and they made it by accident. They would go out into the seas with the big red wines, and the sailors would have all these barrels. You start drinking the red wine from the barrel, and by day 5, the barrel of wine is starting to turn on the high seas. So they would add the brandy to the barrel to preserve it in the oceans, because the brandy would beef it up and it wouldn't oxidize and spoil. That's fortification. So the way this wine's made, they take these indigenous grape varieties from Portugal, Ortega Nacional, Tinto Ruiz, and other grape varieties that are indigenous to the Douro. The Douro is just this incredibly stony, majestic, snake-like river that is so tranquil and so beautiful. It's not a surprise why, it was such an important spot. Man, it's a lot of work to make wine there, though. Just to plant a vineyard, it's just, oh, the labor that would have been required. It's mind-blowing when you look at the terraced hillsides in the Douro and you think back the 1600s, 1700s, and how, much handwork that would have been. Wow. But Kopke is really important because they have incredibly deep cellars of wood-aged port in their cellars. And they have a huge head start. They have a great brand name. They typically are a few dollars more than other tawny wines, but this is their specialty. They don't even make a wood-aged red ruby port. All they make is Colheita and Tawny. They actually do put a lot of energy into their white port program. So they have white port, they have Tawny, and they have Colheita. And I sell all of them. I sell a slice of them. They give me a menu. I could order a tawny port that's 40, 50, 100 years old from their cellar. That's how deep their cellars are. They have great inventories. Every year they'll raise the price of the older ones, and that's a great program too. So 100-year-old port from their cellars, $400 a bottle, whereas this one is a really affordable price. This is what I was talking about when we talk about terraced vineyards. Look at that river. That river snakes back and forth forever through these mountains of Portugal. These are just all granite and schist. These mountains have been like this forever. That river moves slowly and steadily. Here are the grape varieties: Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, and Tita Ruiz. It's described as golden brown color with reddish highlights, vanilla, jammy fruit, caramel, burnt cream. I love this wine. I love this wine right here with a fantastic gnarly blue cheese. Recently had some Stilton. Oh, so good. A really good Stilton. and port wine is made for each other. This is their cellar. And it, by the way, this is one of like 20 barns that they have like this filled with these elongated barrels called pipettes that are made to increase the amount of wood surface area to the wine. They're made for port programs. And so these pipettes elongate an amount of wood, promote oxidation. They have these, these are pretty humid shades. There's a little bit of light coming through so that they could actually see, because they didn't have electricity back then. And then there's this, just old material. You just can't, you walk in and you can smell the thyme. Another spectacular, and everything's almost like perfectly rounded in a slow turn, because that river doesn't go straight ever. It just keeps turning and swirling back and forth. And that's the same thing with the vineyards. $60. And I know I used to work for some of the big port houses. A bottle of 20-year Tawny is more than this now from the big port houses. 30 years over $100, 40 years over $200. I really love where this 15 is. Sure, I love it with another 20 years on it too, but the time and price point, this just hits it for me. By the way, this was oxidized for 15 years, so you can open a bottle of this wine, I keep it in the fridge, California weather and all. I serve it pretty cool. I do like it to warm up a little bit, but this wine, a bottle of this wine will last a year in your refrigerator, no problem. It might even go longer than that, but if you have a bottle of port wine in your refrigerator for a year and you haven't drank it, you need to stop drinking wine and go sober. Just forget about wine, period. You can't possibly look at a bottle of Colheita sitting in your refrigerator for an entire year and not drink it. It's not allowed. If you had an ounce a day, and this is by the way a 750 size, this is not a half bottle. So that is 24 ounces. That's $2, $3 a glass. Where in the port dessert wine world would we go next? We've gone from Hungarian Tokaji to Sauternes from Bordeaux to Riesling from Germany to port wine. A lot of options here. We've now covered the critical top four. We need a fifth one. Let's go to Jerez. Let's do something a little different. Explore the space and taste one of the great producers of sherry. And this is a version of sherry called Pedro Ximenez. This is every area's got a brand that is looked at as the top brand. And for sherry, this is the top brand, Lustau. In fact, because sherry is where it is in its curve, and where it is that back in the 1700s, there were hundreds of sherry producers. There weren't even spirits being sold at that time, really. So cocktails were actually made with sherry, not vodka. There wasn't a thing called vodka. It wasn't a thing. So sherry was the original mixology base. And a famous cocktail of that time would have been like a sherry cobbler. Sherry or Jerez. Jerez is a seaside town at the southern part of Spain. Did we just look at that? It's hard to see that on this map, but I guess if you look at this gray zone up here, you can see that this is Spain, and this is the Mediterranean Ocean out here, and Sherry's Jerez is down here. This is the grape growing zone, and they can grow all these grapes. But this is the port that's right down here in Jerez and in Sevilla, and I guess maybe that's more like Sevilla, and this is Jerez is the greater area. I think that's a little more accurate. But this is a really important historical spot for all wine, not just dessert wine. But because it was such an important spot, they decided to make a dessert version, and they make it with its own grape variety called Pedro Ximenez or PX. This is a PX, if you want to just say what the kids call it, the acronym of PX. And let me get my screen to work for me. Can you see my screen okay? Can you see the Pedro Ximenez bottle? Here's the winery background, House of Lustau. Now, they haven't been around since the beginning of time, but they were better business people and they knew the right moment to get in. They started to buy the right assets. They did not over acquire. They did not become so big that they collapsed. And a lot of the sherry producers, the famous ones back in the day, are gone now. And Lustau lives on today because they were a little nimbler, made some wiser choices, and they really focused on quality over quantity. There's a look at their cellar. Same pipettes. That's magnificent, beautiful. Those are the same pipettes that they use to make the port wine. These are look even longer, and they may be, but they use those same things in port wine production as well. The grape variety here, though, you can make sherry from a couple different grape varieties, but most, if you're talking about the drier sherries, they're made from a grape called Palomino, and they have sherries that have, it's a fortified, spirit-oriented wine, but they used the wine, they boiled the wine, they took wine and turned it into a spirit, and then they added it to the wine, and that's how they came up with sherry. The distillate that they use brings this up to what's about 17% alcohol. Yeah, 17%. And that is the number where if you had some sugars left in the wine, the sugars would have a hard time fermenting at 17%. And here we're talking about Spain, bastion of sunshine. They're going to grow these incredibly bizarre grapes called Pedro Ximenez, and they let them raisinate, and they get this crazy luscious brown sugar and cinnamon molasses type of character. I've got my glass right here pre-poured with you guys, but this is the dessert wine that carries some pretty crazy color. It almost looks like liquid molasses. It's got this brown sugar kind of look to it. And this is really pushing the 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 aromatics of fig, raisins, and dates, which were probably really important food products because they don't need refrigeration. They were part of your diet, and they were pretty common and familiar flavors. And here's, look in the vineyards. All the soils down there are just like pure limestone, like white, like walking on this white. It's not quite sand. It's limestone's just like all the particulate that used to kind of, swim around in the oceans and stuff, and then the oceans recede, and all this soil just kept layering and layering and layering, and that's what limestone is. And it's it's a really optimal place to grow grapes for wine production. You have all this limestone, you have all this sunshine, you're close to the equator, and so you're going to get things want to ripen, things want to express themselves, and that's what you've got here. Oh man, that's
So I have a Fino Aran from the same, also from Lustau, but it's a Fino Arana, Jarana.
yeah, that's one of their Fino sherries. Yeah,
Okay.
that's bone dry.
Yes, yeah.
That's like
It
that's
says muy seco.
have that with your Spanish mackerel on toast with some onions and your little Fino cherry. That's seriously part of where these wines came from was that this was a seaside port in an era where, I mean, you're talking about the smell of fish for miles. This is one of the more important ports in the world back in that era. And the smell, they needed the wines to be like aromatically pointed to cut through the smell of the fishiness, and
Mhm,
or now maybe not so much with the PX here because this is like raisins and
mhm.
dessert, wine. You might even smell coffee, you might smell all kinds of things here. It's a very complex dessert wine. But sherry in itself, it's got such a history and such an amazing, it's a product of a time and a place. And that time is long past. But the so there's very few sherry producers that live on today. So Lustau has been able to be perched at the top as a top example. So you go to a top restaurant and you're going to see that they're pouring Lustau. And Lustau not only makes great sherry, but they also buy it because there are some of these old sherry houses that still have some inventories. And the way that this market has basically gone for the past 100 years is that they'll take some old sherry and auction it. And each of these sherry houses that are still around now are buying and bidding on these barrels, one barrel at a time, and adding it to their collection. And that's where some of these names are coming, like from Lustau, that they'll make a product until all of that wine is gone, and then they'll make another one and have a new name for it. Because I mean, it's one thing that you cannot buy is time, or maybe you can if you're Lustau, you could buy someone else's 50-year-old barrel of sherry. Now that's not how all their wines are made, but that's how some of them are, and some of them are blended in to some different barrels. So that's part of their way that they do things. This last one is so big and so bionic, but absolutely could go with the right type of dessert. I've had a PX with cherries flambe that was really and it was done by this old timer who had the right equipment, table side, copper bowls, um, poured in some high spirit over these beautifully fresh cut cherries. put the spirit in the bowl with the cherries, lit them on fire, and tossed them in front of us until it caramelized all the sugar and the liqueur, and the cherries were like turning into almost a soup. And he took a scoop of vanilla ice cream and that cherry flambe, put it together and served it with a glass of PX. Oh my God, that was spectacular. It's a very good dessert wine for things like pumpkin pie, for chocolate cake, for you could almost just pour PX right on ice cream and have it as a accompaniment to a dessert too. And or this could be dessert all by itself. And by the way, this is really fantastic with cheese. Really fantastic with cheese. All types of cheeses, sharp, soft, blues, really, really a dynamic wine. It's not very often that people call for a PX, but if you like this wine and you took it out and introduced some friends to it, they might love you forever. I finish our program tonight telling you about a couple of up and coming Zooms, but I'll open up the table for questions in just a minute. Heroes of Oregon is next week. I produce what I think is some pretty cool material once in a while. I doubt you could put a cooler lineup together than what we have next week. I have 5 amazing people coming to help me. They'll be live on the Zoom. 4 of them will be live. One who could not be live is Larry Stone, who I was able to interview. Larry, the legend Larry Stone, master sommelier. He's been on the cover of the Wine Spectator. He's worked in some of the most important restaurants in America, and he is really, really an important man. And he started a wine brand in Oregon, and he sat with me and talked with me for a while about Antica Terra. Oh no, that's not his brand. Let me see what. Oh, I just messed up. What is his brand called? Lingua Franca. That's what it's called. Lingua Franca. Sorry, Larry. Lingua Franca. I've been drinking. I did not spit any of this wine tonight. Coming back from Japan, jet lag is a real thing. I am going to sleep well tonight. Not next week. Next week is Oregon. 2 weeks. We're Greek, and we have some great Greek wine on our website, and I am showing it off on this Zoom. We're opening some of our best bottles of Greek wine. This is really top-notch stuff. Come and join me for a night of great Greek wine. And then Baja. Really excited about Baja. We've got some great personalities that are going to join me. It's not a stars effort, but I got some of the producers to do it anyway. And we've got 6 killer wines from Baja. You'll learn a lot. And there's some stuff that's really unique in this particular lineup. Thank you guys for being crusaders for dessert wine. I appreciate you being here tonight. I talked a lot longer than I planned on, so I'll say goodnight and thank you all. Any questions for me?
No, I really enjoyed it. You're right. It's not it. All I hear from people is how sweet it is. They don't like it. Yeah.
Bad, isn't it? Yep. My heart breaks a little bit every time somebody says that. So I've got a very broken heart. I've heard it a lot.
And no Vinsanto. Do you like Vinsanto?
I do. It's not something we get to see here. If somebody brought me in a Vinsanto and I liked it, I would buy it for the store. It's not something people try to sell me. And that's the only reason I don't have one. Honestly, it's a great wine. It's a little different. It's a rack aged. So they take the grapes and they put them on racks, and and they
Mhm.
dry them like
Dry
raisins,
'em out.
press them out, press the raisined grapes, and they've got this high sweet, very sweet grapes, almost raisiny flavors, but with really amazing acidity and really restrained alcohol. There's no fortification. It's considered a rancio is the category they fall into because the grapes are dried. But really a special wine because of the acidity profile and should be in this program. But I literally, in 5 years of running the store, have had 0 people present me a Vinsanto.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
let me take your wine class. Let me figure out all that, then I'll import for you.
All right, sounds good. That could be a way to do it, Lisa.
Yeah, see?
Good, good. Well, I thank you guys. Have a great night and go
Hope you
Dodgers.
We both lost. Ciao.
Oh, Ian,
Yeah.
I'm not plugging anything, but I saw this program last night. I was really fascinated on Psalm TV about this guy made a wine from Iran,
Okay.
and it's really a fascinating look at it if you get Psalm TV.
I will, I know that it's there. I don't even watch normal TV. But I'll look for it on YouTube. I bet I can find it.
Yeah, and it's called Cup of Salvation was the title, but worth the look.
Fun. I've got some friends that work with those guys and help make some content. But you say it's from Iran. I'm sure I could.
Well, he's from Armenia, and they do go over his vineyard, but then he snuck into Iran and bought some grapes and brought them back to Armenia and made the wine.
Ah,
Like I said, it was really kind of fascinating.
well, that's where wine comes from. So
Exactly. That's not allowed to be drank there now. So
yeah, the Muslim population is we need a very forward Muslim leader to change the rules so that Muslims can drink wine.
yeah, exactly.
We're asking for a lot there.
So that was just an FYI. That was all.
Cool, dude.
All right, talk to you. Have a good night.
See you, man. Take care.